After face-planting out of the starter blocks and having to be dragged the remaining 99 meters across concrete and finally over the finish line to wrap up Phase 5, Disney and Marvel would have to be happy with anything that wasn't a flaming disaster to start their next phase. And with Fantastic Four kicking off Phase 6, they just about took their first steps over that low bar that was sitting a few centimeters off the ground. I think this latest Fantastic Four reboot, the MCU's first crack at introducing Marvel's first family, is aptly described in one word: alright. Maybe just alright, but I'm not one to use two words where one would do. Now, as I tried to make clear at the open, even an alright film has to feel like a massive win for Marvel, at least from their perspective, deep in the hole they dug for themselves. In relative terms, the first steps into Phase 6 they took with Fantastic Four might go a long way in building up hope for the rest of this phase, and for the relevancy of the brand on the whole. And it's really been a summer of mediocrity and attempted fresh starts with this summer's big three films so far. Jurassic World Rebirth tried to use the fourth movie in its series to springboard into a new domain of storytelling with new characters. And they belly flopped in spectacular fashion. Superman flew in trying to be the standard bearer for the new DCU. And, while compared to all the DC movies that came before it, Superman did enough to qualify as the fresh start they were looking for, there was nothing super about the man or the movie. And Fantastic Four, being fine at best, still comes out as the best of the bunch. Needless to say, the summer blockbuster scene has been underwhelming. And all Marvel had to do to avoid adding jet fuel to their dumpster fire and win this three-horse race was play it safe and avoid indulging their worst instincts. And they also cut out quite a few scenes and characters, including John Malkovich, ran some focus groups, and did some expensive reshoots, but in the end, I guess they got what they needed: an alright movie. And funny enough, just being alright makes this not only a solid Marvel movie at this point, but it also means this is the best Fantastic Four movie ever made, simply by default, looking at the franchise's cinematic past. But we'll talk more about what makes this new Fantastic Four so alright after we get in a recap of the movie. So here go our first steps into uncharted spoiler territory. Like every other Fantastic Four film, this one follows Marvel's first family. Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, his wife Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, her brother Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and their adopted uncle figure Ben Grimm, the Thing. When this crew of former cosmonauts took to the stars intent on pushing the boundaries of exploration, they encountered a cosmic storm that altered their DNA and gave them powers. Reed Richards, already a genius, becomes Mr. Fantastic, whose body can be stretched further than Epstein news coverage. Sue Storm can turn invisible because in the early 60s when this was made, women sometimes weren't supposed to be seen nor heard. The Human Torch, ever the Bachelor, they made into a literal flamer. And then we have their Thing, who's rock hard and strong. I'll let you figure out what that's a reference to. Rather than make the mistake of rehashing their origin stories once again, this iteration relegated that background to snippets of old news coverage, allowing this one to get right into its, albeit bare-bones, story. We open with Sue Storm, fully visible at this point, peeing on a stick, because she and Reed are going to have a baby. And the people of Earth 828 are overjoyed that their beloved group of planetary protectors is growing by 25%, as is presumably their taxpayer-funded budget. On Halloween night, meteors shower down from the sky along with Silver Surfer, who's a woman this time because why not? Surely they can find one comic book issue to justify it. She tells the puny Earthlings that she comes as Galactus' herald, and their planet is marked for death. The Fabulous Four take to the stars to head off this threat, coming face to face with the world devourer himself, Galactus. Big G says he'll spare their planet if they give him their baby. But the four look around, seeing no crib, no changing table, and a plethora of unsecured cabinets, and tell Galactus he's clearly not ready for a baby. They flee, pursued by the Silver Surfer, and escape by the skin of their teeth. Selfish Sue then decides this moment is a fantastic time to go into labor. So on the ship, she has the courtesy to turn invisible so no one has to see her hoo-ha or the live birth of her kinda ugly CGI baby boy. The real baby later on is cuter though. They receive a hero's welcome back on Earth until they explain that their baby is worth more than the billions of U-Alls, prompting worldwide protests against the Fantastic Four as people want to throw their baby to the space wolves. But when Sue Storm, in all her womanly strength, walks among the people and introduces her son Franklin, the people rally behind them once more. They get to work devising a plan to defeat Galactus, a truly brilliant plan to teleport the Earth across the galaxy and hide like cowards. Also, there's a 2% chance of the planet ending up in an uninhabitable zone, and yet no one on Earth seems to have a problem with this. To accomplish this task, they need a planet-wide blackout to summon enough energy to power their relays, which the whole world agrees with. So I guess this universe doesn't have any wild cards like a North Korea that would have held out just to screw everyone else. But at the moment of truth, the Silver Surfer appears and cowabungos their relays. She's eventually rebuffed when the Human Torch gives her a super guilt trip and she flies off, but Galactus is still coming all the same. Their new plan is to use their son as bait and draw Galactus into the path of a surviving relay and teleport him across the galaxy to bumfuck space nowhere. When he comes stomping into town, the Fantastic Four is no match for the Devourer and he grabs Franklin. Then Sue Storm goes into angry mama bear mode and now she's a match for Galactus all on her own. They engage in a telekinetic shoving match, which is as lame as it sounds, and Sue almost wins. But she needs the Silver Surfer to swoop in for the assist and knock Galactus into the teleporter. Earth 828 is saved, but Sue dies from the effort. Reed kisses her corpse all over, but then their cosmic love child cries, and his crying is so annoying that Sue comes back to life. The end. But wait, there's a cutesy post-credit scene with an animated Fantastic Four cartoon intro, but the mid-credit scene teases Doctor Doom, what all the nerds are really here for. As you can probably tell, what really makes Fantastic Four alright is that they played it safe. They gave us a bare-bones story that's really more of a 2-hour introduction to the first family of Marvel rather than an epic adventure on its own. I mean really, what happened? They had a baby and they beat off Galactus. Pretty straightforward. The villains didn't have too much going on. Silver Surfer had a tragic past that plays out in a 60-second flashback, and Galactus eats things because he's hungry. All the members of the Fantastic Four were exactly who they're supposed to be, in their powers and their personalities, and nothing more. And what little action there was, and there was very little, was forgettable at best. You're not going to get goosebumps remembering the Thing running through some pillars, or Sue Storm woman screaming as she pushed her hands against the air. This movie simply set out to shoot for par, and that's what they got. Pedro Pascal looks like he was hired so they could ride his name and his popularity, rather than his actual ability to play this role. Most of the time, he was stiffer than Diddy sitting in the corner at a freak-off. Vanessa Kirby was hailed as a standout as Sue Storm, but I think that only holds true in relative terms. While we're on the subject of Sue Storm, I don't know how being able to turn invisible gives you telekinetic powers, but who am I to question anything in a universe where a surfboard can take you across the galaxy? Joseph Quinn did alright as Johnny Storm, and I think Eben Moss Bachrach, or however you say it, did pretty well with Ben Grimm, but the Thing's facial animations didn't do him any favors. Now, this movie did do what every Fantastic Four movie should do, in playing into the importance and meaning of family and all the themes therein. But even in that realm, every ensemble movie these days plays into all those tired family-themed tropes. So even though they referenced family possibly as much as the Fast and Furious franchise, it still doesn't really stand out as anything novel. The movie does have a good, charming aesthetic throughout, leaning into that 60s, retro-futuristic, dawn of the space travel era look. And even though some moments ventured into I am woman, hear me roar territory, for the most part, First Steps didn't do anything to draw the ire of fans. No, they played it safe. And in this day and age, for Fantastic Four, for Marvel, and for Disney, that's about the best you can hope for. It's early, but as of this writing, Fantastic Four is getting a 93% from viewers on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.8 on Metacritic. At the box office, the four look to be on track to rake in $125 million over their opening weekend. But like every movie these days, it cost $250 million just to make, so we'll have to wait and see where Fantastic Four ends up. As for me, I'd give this movie about a 6.5. And on my scale, that puts Fantastic Four in debate watch territory, but leaning more toward good than bad. All the MCU needed to do was not self-immolate with this movie, and Phase 6 would be off to a running start compared to Phase 5. And although Fantastic Four wasn't flashy or exciting, it looks like it did just enough to get them off and running. Which is probably the best you can hope for with a movie that really only exists to introduce the characters and serve as a launching pad for the Doctor Doom arc. And in the heat of this summer of mediocrity, being just alright is apparently enough to take the crown. Did you check out First Steps? How does this movie compare to the other Fantastic Fours in your book? Do you have any interest in the MCU's Phase 6 and the Doctor Doom storyline? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to Hatewatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for getting through yet another Pedro Pascal project with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.